Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond, the MIT Alumni Show. I'm your trusted host, Rob Kalwarowsky, MIT Class of 2010, world-renowned executive coach, author, and speaker. Each week, we are sharing the stories with our friends and classmates, fellow MIT alumni who've taken action to shape the world. We'll share what we've learned, top strategies, and bring our community together to help everyone achieve our goals. No, this show is not officially affiliated with MIT, so any views expressed on this show are of the host and guest only. This show is designed to build a community that trusts, connects, and shares with each other so we can all take action towards a better world. Let's get rolling. Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond MIT Alumni Show. I'm Rob Kalwarowsky, and as always, we have another special guest, the Senior Staff Product Manager at ConsenSys, Tom Hay, is with us. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rob. Thanks for having me on. It was really great to see you in person, like just week and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it was amazing. And as Tom mentioned, we were together at the MIT reunion a week and a half ago. Now, Tom, what was your favorite? What did you enjoy the most about that time?
First off, like just the conversations that I got to have with everyone, especially kind of like the ones where we were just like, people are just like bumping into each other, going to and from events, those, being in the student center and just like, hey, what's up? How have you been? Like, what have you been up to? And then, the really highlight for me was kind of, we had this like Stories Across Spaces event that then rolled into the class dinner, and the conversations, what people were sharing, it was like amazing. So that was just incredible. That sequence of, hearing these amazing stories, what people were doing, rolling right into the class dinner, and just people catching up. They were kicking us out at the end because everyone was just having such a good time catching up to what was going on. So for me, that like Saturday afternoon into evening was just an incredible time.
Yeah, it's so cool. So for folks, I mean, obviously Lauren and Laura have been on the show before, and then Laura Hahn is in the queue.
Yeah.
And then I actually interviewed Oliver Ye last week in podcast terms, but it was yesterday in real life. So yeah, lots of folks who did the Stories in Spaces are with us. So check those out. Now, Tom, let's hear your story. So what have you been up to since graduation?
Yeah. So 2010, we graduated. Feels like a million years ago, feels like yesterday. Graduated. I was course 3 in course 17, so material science and political science. I immediately after graduation had an opportunity to do MISTI Spain. So I did that over the summer between starting full-time work in the fall. And I was able to go to be in Madrid working for a wind power equipment company called Wind to Power System. So that was like, got to spend the summer doing the whole MISTI Spain experience, which was cool. There were folks from our class, also classes, 1 or 2 years below us who were there. And that then led into, I had accepted an offer at Booz Allen Hamilton. So I started there in the fall. I was able to kind of defer that a little bit to do MISTI Spain. We worked at Booz Allen for 4 years, though one of those years I was on a leave of absence, which I'll get into. Kind of like showed up there on a team at a time when that sort of meeting of like operations, research, and data was becoming what was being called like big data and all the work around data analysis, moving a lot of like the analysis and modeling into BI tools like Tableau or Power BI. So I was working there at a time where I ended up drawing a lot on like sort of the building graphs and analysis background that came from material science, where we're, doing current voltage curves, as well as sort of the work in the poli-sci department, which was like really hands-on with like Stata and a little bit of R, which then became a lot of what we were doing, like R, Python, writing a bunch of SQL, basically working with clients to take the data that they had laying around in databases or spreadsheets, combining that together and actually able to turn that into usable information. So that's kind of where I got, learned a lot about like the working world. I was there for like working full time there for 3 years. Going into that third year, I was, it's a great place to like grow up, I would say, as a job. But I was also coaching lacrosse, JV lacrosse at my high school I went to on the side, and I did that for the first 2 years. Like every spring was just crazy. I'd like go in super early, work until like 3:30, rush out. I'd like drive from like DC to Northern Virginia. I was based in like Arlington and Virginia, but I was like going from like DC to Alexandria, which like you had to time it right to be able to get there in time for practice, but also like not be on the highway when the HOV started, because I wasn't, it was just me going. There was no one that I could like, so I had to like get on the highway just before that started. And if I did that, it would be like 15 minutes, no problem. Get there in time for practice. And so 2 years of that was amazing. And I was just like finding, just like working with like young people and like contributing to their education in the way through sports, but like still, during the spring when I was coaching, you're seeing the team like for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, right? It's like every day. So you're actually seeing and working with them just as much as like any teacher in the school. And it just like reinforced me how important education was. And as I was progressing up in my career, like after those 2 years, there's an opportunity to actually take over as like the head coach. And it's like, I don't have time. Like I can't move ahead in my career at this job and put in the time I need to and coach in the spring. And so I like really didn't that third year. And it was just like a hole, like a gaping hole in sort of my existence. I was like, dang, like, I don't have that touch point. And that really gave me a lot of fulfillment and like being able to be working in schools. And so a combination of things. My wife at the time, we had just started dating, she was going to go in and teach for America. Class of 2008, David Kroom, friend from college, had really recommended to me like, hey, if you really like working in education, there's a program called Education Pioneers that can move you into from like a consulting career into the education space and kind of give you the wraparound on how to do that. And sort of the confluence of those events, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna apply to this program. I'll take a leave of absence, and if it doesn't work, I'll come back. Booz Allen had someone a year before who had done the same thing, so there was like a blueprint for it. And so I applied to that program. I got in and I was placed at a charter school network in Dallas Fort Worth called Uplift Education. Partially, one half was like the work was like interesting that they were doing there. Another half was my wife at the time. We're dating. She was in Oklahoma City as a middle school teacher. So I was like, okay, Dallas, it's like a 3-hour drive. We can go back and forth, which we did for the next 2 years. So I ended up, taking that position, taking the fellowship. It was a 10-month fellowship, working in the front office of this charter school network, doing data analysis, taking sort of those skills around SQL, around business intelligence, and saying like, hey, how can we display data on assessment of the students, like the test results, the interim ones, the ends of years ones, to help teachers actually make decisions better, and tying that to curriculum. And so that 10-month fellowship turned into staying on, did another fellowship with the Center for Education Policy Research through their strategic data project. And that's at like Harvard's Graduate School of Education. So signed up for like another 2 years, did another year after that. I was there for 4 years and was, just running, started out working there, but then ended up like leading the department, the data and assessment department there. Was in Dallas for for 4 years, kind of going all across Dallas, the mid cities, and Fort Worth, going into schools that we ran, and participating in all that sort of teacher training, figuring out how we really connect curriculum to the test results, doing predictions on which students were kind of in that like danger zone of not being able to like pass certain assessments, and then trying to tie that back to certain curricular interventions that a teacher would use. And so that was like an awesome experience. So I didn't end up going back to Booz Allen. I ended up, that leave of absence, then ended up leaving there, staying on Uplift, and I was at Uplift for 4 years before moving back from Dallas to the DC area into my current job right now, which is I continue to coach lacrosse there in Dallas. I was coaching for the 4 years I was there, at the sort of like more like intro level. So that was really fun. Just like there was a school I would like finish at work and then like just drive 5 minutes down the road and to a practice. And that was really fun. So kept that up. Ended up then transitioning to the current role, which is also, once again, like MIT people play a big role in this. Andreas Wallendahl, class of 2011, was at a company called ConsenSys, which I am at now, ConsenSys Software. And it is a blockchain company specifically focused on Ethereum. The product that people know the most it would be the Metamask wallet. So that is a product within ConsenSys. And I actually joined the education team at ConsenSys. The work there was like really, at that time, it's called ConsenSys Academy. And it was focused when I joined on building a tool for self-ownership of student data, right? So that you could basically, as a student, if you pass a class, you get a certain ticket somewhere along the line, like that's actually something that you have, and it's held in a wallet that you hold, but there's also proof of it on chain so that you can like refer back to that. So that was a product I started working on in 2017, like later summer of 2017. It was a bit early for its time, so we ended up deprecating that product, though I think it will come back because it's something
you should totally bring it back.
Yeah, and that was a cool experience because I got to work with there were people at the Digital Currency Initiative at the Media Lab who were doing work around this, more on the Bitcoin blockchain, and we were approaching it from the Ethereum side due to its Ethereum's programmability versus Bitcoin and like cheaper storage costs. But when that deprecated, I moved just into the education side, like applying like, okay, how can we build curriculum to build out this developer community? And then also just like the interested folks who are like, how's this going to apply to my life? So yeah, for my first like 2017 to basically 2021, I like was working on education that became developer relations, community, at ConsenSys, and really building out, online courses. We would do a developer boot camp that was like synchronous and asynchronous. So we'd have, videos, but we'd also have live sessions. And still coaching in that time, was coaching in DCPS. So there's a common theme here. Kept coaching lacrosse middle school at that point. And yeah, it was just like a pretty different. But I think there was always like kind of a through line there of working with using data to try and make a experience or like learning better. And then eventually there came an opportunity to switch over to sort of the back end API product developer platform called Infura. And I made that transition in 2021. And then after, so I've stayed with that product line, but then since 2022, all 2022, I've basically been working on this protocol that we call the Decentralized Infrastructure Network, which is right now it's a API marketplace protocol for specifically targeted at the blockchain and Web3 space to allow for different like businesses and providers to effectively collaborate, also to an extent like compete in sort of a marketplace that allows them to provide API services to each other and that effectively allows for like the expansion of services and in networks in this space between the various companies that are operating in the space. It's been a really fascinating experience. Like there's a lot of interesting computer science work in that. There's still a little bit of course 3 stuff. There is some like, learning about, hard drive storage capabilities and advancements there because that plays into it. But also like today I was, just doing a deep dive on like some of the trade-offs between gzip and Brotli compression as we're sort of looking at different endpoints and like what's going to get better performance versus like one CPU, trade-offs versus the compression latencies. So it's a lot more tapping into that computer science physics side, kind of bringing it a little bit full circle in terms of like getting back more to the material science stuff that where I kind of started out.
Cool. I mean, so I'm a complete, I know almost nothing about the Web3 and marginal about blockchain. Like, can you explain a little bit about, like first is what is Web3, and then I understand that the blockchain makes everything, I guess, unique and stored and I guess guaranteed in a sense. But like, how does that apply with the rest of the web?
Yeah, so the kind of quick and dirty definition of Web3, and you'll see different variations of this, but the way I like to think about it is when we were first getting, computers connected in schools and stuff, like when we were in elementary school and there might have been like one computer in the classroom, maybe it's connected to the internet at that point. That's like
I
very
didn't
much
have web at that time.
yeah. There's like Web 1.0, right? So it's like all these sort of like static web pages mostly. It's kind of just like this old school forum style. And that's really like the beginning. That's almost like not the beginning of the web and sort of like the ARPANET stuff, but it's like, the first like sort of commercialization of the web is this like Web 1.0 and, the hamster dance era, basically, if you remember that website. So it's like everything is very like this forum. You have, you have your ISP is like the AOL CD or whatever that you're getting.
That's right. You're waiting for that 14th minute countdown.
If someone picks up the phone, like you're disconnected. And what, Web 1.0 kind of looks like the beginning of the commercialization of the web. Things are very much like you can just, you can be anyone on the internet type thing. There isn't a ton of commercialization. Like it's kind of hard to do payments on the internet because that's not built into the HTTP at all, right? And so that's probably like that era. People are buying stuff. It's like early Amazon, eBay, very much like not super commercially driven. It's more like, hey, people are going on, they're creating communities, and that is kind of like the, Tim Berners-Lee, those type of people. Like they're very much like the patron saints of Web 1.0. I forget who it was that conceived of / came up with the Web 2.0 term, but like that's really that shift into what we high school and college like really sort of grew up in. Like it's like, hey, now the internet is this like very sort of focused on the, the sort of social media, web pages, attention monetization type world. And, you think back to like, look at the difference between like a live journal / Zanga / MySpace. And I would say like Reddit looks more like that even today, even though Reddit is, commercialized, they sell ads, like it still is like more of that flavor of the web, that early Web 2.0 than like the kind of Facebook. You remember like the phase shift when like Facebook came and then Twitter, like that was all. I mean, Twitter, we were in college. Like that's when Twitter showed up. Uber is kind of spreading, Lyft, all that kind of stuff as we're like getting out. That's like very like Web 2.0, attention economy. You can kind of do a lot of times like the services are free, but you're going to pay for them, right? Like you don't own your data. People are harvesting your data and they're using it to serve you content, to sell ads. that kind of stuff. Web 3.0 is, I think originally it wasn't associated with the blockchain space. That term was actually like this idea of the semantic web. That's what I remember, which kind of, now we're a little bit going full circle with like LLMs and AI. But eventually the sort of Web 3.0 is like almost saying like, hey, can we return to a lot of the like Web 1.0 self-ownership, self-hosting, because we don't want to commercialize the data, or if we are going to commercialize the data, like we want to have sovereignty over it, control. So if I'm going to allow you to harvest a bunch of data about my internet habits, then like I should have an opportunity to monetize those. And the reason that's sort of tied in with the blockchain space is because one of the ways that you can think about the blockchain space is a way to transmit value or commodities in a way that like HTTP didn't have a pay option. There's no, like, you can get a resource, you can post, delete, all that sort of stuff, but you can't be like, I pay or like transmit this digital collectible and then not have that be double spent. So what blockchains enable is triple ledger accounting. This idea that you cannot double spend a resource. It actually has a identifier to it that makes it so that it cannot be double spent. And that is a novel innovation, because if you think about it, like most of the stuff, like think back to like Napster, right? People just copied music, and I'm not commenting one way or the other of whether that's like a good or a bad thing. I think there's enough spilled on that, sort of enough words said and enough written on that. But it's like trivially easy to like copy any sort of document, any sort of digital file. And if you're going to have something that's like a collectible or, money, digital gold, in the case of Bitcoin, like you have to know that there's a set amount of it. And you can only do that if you have this sort of solving of the double spend problem. You can't spend something twice. You can't just like right click, copy it and say, oh, well, I got another Bitcoin. So the idea of
Not like the regular banks.
Yeah. So to kind of tie that all together, like the Web3 side is saying like, hey, because you can have this sort of literally existing resource, like you can have this like accounting of resources and transparency around that. Now you can enable all the stuff that would be more of a return to many of the principles of like this sort of open web, because you can have that sort of sovereignty over an ownership over something. And that can be tied to an identity. And typically that identity is something that's derivative of like a cryptographic address. So think like a hexadecimal address. That's why you see a lot of people on like Twitter with the 0x, whatever. That's kind of like a reference to that. So, blockchains at the end of the day, like what do? They are a particular type of data structure that has like a way of updating that's done typically collaboratively between many participants. That's different from like a database that you would just like run for a website, because that collective updating and collective management of the state of the chain, the state of the database, essentially the state of the data structure, it allows for more interactions that aren't necessarily controlled by a single entity. So that is if you're really interested in like just the general idea of like consensus mechanisms, like how do we come to consensus around something using technology, like most of the sort of research that's been gone forward has been in this blockchain space, because like how you have all these different individuals, actors, organizations literally update the state of the chain, like that's where a lot of consensus mechanism research has been, that maybe 30 years ago is like in Bell Labs in New Jersey doing a lot of work on that, and then it kind of just stopped. And now it's been picked up, like a lot of these old research papers, as people are trying to design better and better blockchains for whatever need they have. They're looking and saying, oh, could we tinker with this this consensus mechanism that was originally come up with, before. And I think that's like a thing to stress with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, is like it was literally taking technologies that already existed, but combining them in a novel way to create something unique, a new technology.
So you can do the important things like sell pictures of monkeys.
And you can sell JPEGs of monkeys on the internet. That is something that you can do. Yes.
So, Tom, actually, interestingly enough, so Oliver had this question, and I would love to put it to you. So, he was asking, how do you balance your career aspirations with the things outside of work? And as you mentioned, like coaching lacrosse, like how do you navigate that? And how do do you have any advice?
Yeah. The easiest answer for me is like when you can combine them, the um it's the most time efficient. I don't know if it's like the best, but it's the most time efficient. So I
So you're
think,
playing lacrosse on the blockchain.
yeah, so that does become harder. The biggest thing I've noticed, and I think MIT, I mean, just general, like going this schooling has been very helpful in this, is sort of understanding how you structure your day in order to like do all those things. So I think at any point, like what being now 15 years out of college, like the things that I want to do and how to spend that free time is different. There's some things that are the same. I'm looking forward to like, you know, coaching my kid in lacrosse. I've taken a break from it for now, but that's mainly because it's like I gotta wait for um, my kid to hit the age, and then I'm gonna be right back into it. So kind of like enjoying the little bit of like break from that space, knowing that it's like, hey, I'm gonna be back in it in a very short time. But I do think that like structuring the day and being intentional about like what do I like to do? What do I want to do? And then, having like with having family, it's like what do I want to share with my family? Like for us right now, a lot of that is honestly being able to spend time outdoors, right? Like we're fortunate we live in a place where it's like we're very close to a lot of amazing nature, national parks. And so it's just sort of saying like, how do I set up my day? How do I set up my week? How do I, set up a month to sort of like prioritize those things and make it part of, my essentially routine, right? Like I think that is the key, is like, the things you want to do have to sort of be your habits. Like your hobbies, if your hobbies are part of your habits, then it makes it way easier. So um it's just kind of making it like, it's got to be a habit to like get out for a big day hike at least once a month. And making that part of like our family routines, and sort of building that in. And it's realizing like that there's limited time is actually very clarifying, because then it sort of takes away from the like, oh, I could be doing all these things, but it's like, but what do I really want to be doing? And, when you're doing something you really want to be doing, you get in that flow state. Time takes on a different meaning, a different perception, I guess. Like you perceive time differently, and prioritizing like activities that get you in that flow state, or get you like active, that get me like actively sort of like in the present, is really important. And I think work can be that too, but it's just being like intentional about what that is and what that means, or finding a way to find that focus. It's not easy. I think basically it means constantly sort of doing that sort of like accounting of like, is this how I want to spend my time? Is this you know, how am I showing up for my family? How am I showing up for my coworkers? You have to be like super intentional. And, it's a lot easier when you're younger, because like all those, activities are just kind of put out there. Like you can join any club or whatever. But then, as that changes and like your time becomes more limited because of other obligations, family, work obligations pick up. It's like, okay, well, if I only have this much time, like what is going to be the thing that really makes it is best for me. Not necessarily like most fun, but like, is it learning something new? Is it like engaging a different part of my brain? So, I mean, it's a good question, I think, that Oliver asked. And I think the answer is just like you have to make those hard decisions and be intentional about them, because if you're not, like, something will make it for you, whether it's, you know, and the thing that you don't want it to be is like your phone, essentially, like, right? Like, because I think everyone's been in a situation where you can just go on YouTube and then be like, oh my God, or Instagram or whatever, and be like, what happened? And it's like, I could have been like reading this book that I've always been wanting to read. And yeah, getting in a flow state on the apps is like not what you want to do, being on, like Instagram or YouTube or
But if
Twitter.
you're watching this on YouTube, finish the episode.
That's true.
Please.
Finish the episode. I think long term, I would say long form content on YouTube is like great. It's more of those like small dopamine hits that I think are bad, or doom scrolling. So it's one thing to like watch an hour long podcast or 3 hour long podcast, or like a video about like the history of something, or the video of like some person with like terrible camera skills, like filming how to fix something that inevitably you got to fix something in your house, and you're like, gosh, like this person's so knowledgeable, but like their camera skills are so bad. That's all fine, because you're engaging that part of your brain where you're thinking, and you're like, oh wow, like that's cool that they said that, or like, oh gosh, how am I gonna fix that like pipe that way, or the car. That's cool. But just that sort of like doom scrolling, reactionary, like, oh, someone's wrong on the internet, that makes me mad. That's like defaulting to spending time doing that, I think, is the trap that a lot of people are, that's kind of the Web2 way that you're being put into. And, it would be disingenuous of me like trying to work in this Web3 space to then be like, oh, well, I'm just going to spend my time doing that. It's like, hey, if I believe in this thing, like I got to live my, like, I kind of already did live my, I do. It's a reverse, like, biased situation. I already lived my life that way. But that being said, you got to stay true to those values. If those are the values, then it's like, got to live those values.
Your point about clarity is so key. And this is why I get all of my clients to define their goals. Because once you have your goals and your values, because once you have those, then they're not really hard decisions anymore.
Yeah.
It just becomes like, this is what I need to do because this is my goal and this is my value and this is what moves me forward towards one of those two things.
It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's not that it takes it away, or it's like, oh, like now all the decisions are made for me, but it just makes the decisions a lot easier. Like you're saying, if what you want is to, run a 5K, there's no like, and that's kind of not a silly example, but I think it's like an example that resonates with people. Once you say like, hey, my goal is set this time, I got to do this, there's no shortcuts, right? Like there's tinkering of like, okay, do I train this way? But it's like, I'm going to have to train. I'm going to have to get used to running 5Ks. I'm going to have to get used to running them under race conditions so I can run them faster. And I may have to do other things to optimize that time, whether that's training, diet, sleep. So I think it's a good example because it's like something that the inputs and the outputs are vague enough that it's like there's tinkering involved, but it's also straightforward enough that it's like, I know the matrix of the things that I can play with. Obviously it gets like way more complicated than that for a lot of other stuff, but it's like the same. It's like, I have these inputs, I want this output. If you've defined your goals and values, then the values are just like, what am I willing to do on the input side to get the outputs? And then the goals are just like, what are the outputs, right? And then it's very clarifying.
It's totally right. And one thing, like defining your goals and values is huge. The other thing I get folks to do is like take a week or two and like actually break down what you've done and what you've spent time on. And then you can start seeing the actual data of, I spent 30 minutes doom scrolling, or I spent 30 minutes doing something that wasn't on my important list of things I needed to do, emails or text messages or whatever, right? And I think there's those small things. And even in a lot of requests, like everybody's request at work is always urgent because in their world it is. In your world, it might not be. And so being able to say no to some requests, or being able to say, hey, that's going to happen next week, those are some small things that will free up your bandwidth for today to do the important things and then get, prioritized. But it's simple, but it takes deliberate action to make it happen.
Yeah, that's what I find. Like most things are pretty simple, but they're hard in that like you have to do them every day.
Yeah. So Tom, I mean, one of the things about the show, right, is bringing our fellow alumni together and supporting each other. So what is your biggest goal right now, and how can your fellow 2010s support you?
Yeah, I would say that, kind of there's two goals. One of them, I'll do the easy one first. So I think, just obviously we just did the reunion. Big goal is just to stay connected, reconnect. Very happy that, we had this and it was a good chance to reconnect, but like not putting that off for 5 years is a big goal.
We'll see you at the 25-year reunion.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, like sort of keeping up that constant stream of communication and opportunities to, hang out with people, meet up, and groups of various sizes. So like that's one. And I think, how people can help is just like reach out. There's a lot of like, it's easy right now because there's a lot of energy. It's easy to talk to a lot of people, keep those conversations going. But like, I think as evidenced by this reunion, like everyone's pretty much like the same. So it's like, just because we haven't like chatted for a while, if there's like a gap, which is going to happen, right? Like that's just life. Like, don't feel afraid about reaching out. I'm trying to do the same because what I've realized is that oftentimes like people are very happy to talk and catch up, and any sort of reluctance to that is just in our heads. So that's goal number one. That's work in progress. We're gonna work on that, but that is my ask for everyone.
So one thing for folks out there. So Alex Bayer set up a Discord.
Yes.
So get on that.
Get on the
if Discord. You're not on it, if you're not on that, shoot me an email, rob@robkalwarowsky.com, and I'll send you the link for it, and then get on it.
And there's geographies too. So like you can coordinate, you can stay in the channels that are like geographic focus. But yeah, I think that's the thing. And so yeah, encourage everyone to do that. And that's like the easiest way to keep in touch. I think professionally, this project that I'm working on, this protocol, just like if you're someone who's in this space and you're interested in what we're doing, like that is something that just love for, go to infura.io and you'll see on there's decentralized infrastructure network, read about it. There's a white paper. Would love feedback, suggestions, thoughts on what we're building. And that's a place that you can stay up to date. There's also we have a Twitter handle, din.build. So at din build. And if you go to that website, it also redirects to an Infura page that shows that information. And so din.build also gets you there. Yeah, just like any feedback, thoughts, potential for collaboration. That's been a big project. That is since 2022. That's what I've been working on full time. So there's so many smart people that we know. And if there's something there that resonates, just reach out, because I'd love to hear from all the people smarter than me who I was like, gosh, like you guys get this, like your linear algebra skills are so much better than mine. Like, please help me. That's always helpful to just like hear feedback or thoughts or questions. MIT folks have the best questions out of anyone. Very special place. So very lucky. Would love to, hear some of that feedback or thoughts that people have.
Totally. And we'll drop those links in the podcast notes. So if anyone needs them, check down below. I've also put Tom's LinkedIn in the podcast notes as well, so you can check it. Well, you can find him there as well, or on the Discord channel.
Yeah, I'm there. What is my? Is it? I think it's at Tom Hay. I don't know. Discord is tough. Everyone created like their Discord. Like I have like two, so I have to remember which one I joined. But I'll like at myself in the channels to be like, this is me.
Amazing. And Tom, I mean, on that note, how would you like to support the rest of the 2010s?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, if anyone I think has any questions or needs advice about kind of those, the areas, the four areas that I have some sort of insight, I think, to give is, any sort of like I'm still very involved in the education space, at least like in keeping up with it and keeping up with those groups that as a part of. So if you're in education, K-12, higher ed, always interested in talking and connecting with folks, try and stay in touch with a lot of people who are working in districts. So always happy to connect on that front and help people out, make connections. If you're in the world of lacrosse, like are you
If
happening
you
into
own
it?
a professional lacrosse team, reach out to Tom.
If you need analytics for your professional lacrosse team, if you're an owner of one of the indoor or outdoor teams and you need analytics support, happy to provide it for a reasonable fee. But seriously, like if folks like kids are, they're getting involved in that and they're like, I didn't play this, I don't know what's going on. Like, do you have any suggestions around coaching clinics or stuff like that? Like I've done, the US lacrosse stuff in various clinics and have been involved in that world, played at MIT, played in high school. So very happy to sort of just weigh in on that, how like that whole thing works, how summer leagues, all that kind of stuff. Because I know there's just like a lot of pressure on parents and should I put my kid in this program and what do I need to be doing? So always happy to sort of weigh in on what's important and what you can kind of just ignore. Anyone in the Web3 blockchain space, love to connect. We had a great session just before the Stories Across Spaces. So I think I'm kind of getting plugged in with everyone who's doing that. I can support you and kind of, especially in the Ethereum space, it's what I know best. I've been in it for the last 8 years, so I have a lot of connections there. And then I think the final thing is just like, if you're, I live in the Pacific Northwest, if you're in the PNW, reach out. Would love to hang out if you're around. If you just need suggestions about where to go in the greater, from Vancouver, BC down to Portland, I have my hot takes and I can give you a list of restaurants, campsites, whatever you want. I got a short list, so for each kind of place. So reach out because I'll give you my recs. So I think those are the four ways I can support.
Amazing, Tom. I mean, so of course, I have an upcoming book coming out called Capitalizing on Chaos. So I would love to ask you this question before we get you out of here. How are you navigating the chaos that we're experiencing in our world?
I think my anchoring has been that definitely feels like a period of like acceleration, just in terms of information, in terms of things that are happening in chaos, and so I think the things that I've been doing is like super intentional about my media consumption, to be like, what are the things that I care about, and like getting information on that, but not, once again, like overexposing to clickbaity stuff. That's really hard, but I think like being able to really stay focused on like what are things that, I care about and I feel like I have some agency over, and focusing on those. So like one example, like love the outdoors. So I'm very like focused on, how do we preserve, the public spaces that we have, nature, how do we sort of like mitigate against a warming earth, and also prevent, natural, you have to respond to prevent or respond to like natural disasters, both that are just that happen or like man-made stuff. So I think that like preparedness aspect is something, in sort of like the consumption of stuff and thinking about, okay, how do I sort of focus on those things and then be prepared around them? That is how I am approaching it. So it means like a lot of reading, but like specific reading focusing on those things that I care deeply about, and then just making sure that I'm doing something every day, that I'm not like just staying in my head, but it's like, okay, if like you care about, emergency preparedness, like make sure sign up to get like my CPR recertified, right? Or like first aid to the Red Cross. Like there are tangible things that you can do, and it always feels better if you just commit to doing the tangible thing than it is to sort of like be feeling like things are happening to you. So I think like in times of chaos and uncertainty, a strategy, there is a strategy to just like kind of not do anything or wait it out. But I think to feel that sense of, hey, I have agency, it's like they're like even simple stuff like being like, hey, I know how to do CPR, I know how to treat like first aid. So if something, if there were to be like an earthquake, or if someone like you saw like someone have a heart attack, like that you weren't just like, I don't know what to do. It's like, oh, I can help this person. I can do something. That's just an example. I think there's other stuff like could just be like learn how to, fix a bike. Not easy, but like if you learn to do it, like you just feel that sense of agency. It's like, oh, if like I need to get somewhere, I don't have any other form of transportation, I have a bike, I get a flat tire, I know how to fix it, I'm that much more prepared. So intentional.
And as you mentioned, there's someone on YouTube with poor camera
There's
skills
someone
that can
with
help you
terrible
learn how
camera
to do
skills
that.
who shows you, who is the expert on how to do that. And it's almost better because you learn, because you don't, it's like doing PISA at MIT, right? It's like the professors, they show you like the simplest version of the problem, and then they show you the most advanced version, and they're like, so I showed you the simple version, now do the most advanced version. And then like that's how you learn it, where you're like, okay, I know these like three things, they have in frame like this part of popping off the tire, now I got to figure out the rest. You learn very quickly like what works and what doesn't as you fail through it, or you can't get the tire back on.
It's yeah, I mean it's 100% great advice. One thing I just will mention for folks out there, so when Tom mentioned that do nothing is sometimes what people default to, that's actually a very common response. And it's not because you may get these thoughts of like not knowing what to do or being, but usually what that is like some sense of fear or overwhelm. And what happens is basically your amygdala takes over your brain, and freezing is a response. Like when you hear fight and flight, there's also freeze and fawn are the other two that nobody talks about. But freezing is one of your amygdala responses, and that's when you just sit and sort of turtle up and do nothing. If you read my book, I can help you expand those possibilities. And also exactly what Tom said, right, is you can also take action and take control of what you're doing. And so definitely great advice.
Yeah, it is an okay strategy to not like sell all your assets, though. I will say that. Like sometimes that's a good strategy to be like, I'm just gonna wait, see what happens here, take a longer time horizon. So no shade on people who are like, I'm gonna wait this out, but like you're saying, like it's only if that's your intentional response.
That's right.
Is it good? It's good. If you're defaulting to that, it's normal, but like you got to break out of that for sure.
That's right. That's exactly it. It's all about, right? And it's the hack, or the key is going from the state where your amygdala is taken over to the state of turning back on our executive functioning in our brain. And that's really, there's deep work to do in that. But don't worry, I will help you through all of it.
It's in the book. You got to read the book.
You got to read the book, or you can reach out. Also, of course, I work with folks one-on-one and teams and stuff. So happy to do that. Tom, it was incredible to have you on the show. And I mean, for folks out there, of course, we've dropped Tom's LinkedIn in the podcast notes. In Fura, the link to the Twitter, I forget what it was, but it's down there. And then also, if you're looking for the Discord, you can just reach out to me or Tom, and we'll hook you up. And yeah, stay in touch. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. This is a really fun conversation.
Everybody, we appreciate you spending your time with us, and we'll see you next week.